Tyron Woodley versus Gilbert Burns. Now, what really happened in this fight? It was a surgical dissection from Gilbert Burns, picking off everything Woodley does. So we had questions. Did Woodley get better over the time? Did this Lee have given an opportunity to get better from his last dominant defeat against Kamaru Usman? The answer is no. The progression of Tyron Woodley's skills has pretty much stagnated. There are people that say that he has gotten worse, he's not the same fighter as before, but that is absolutely not true, considering he has fought this exact same way in so many fights previously. We're talking about his last fight against Kamaru Usman, his Stephen Thompson fights, his Demian Maia fight, even all the way back to when he fought Rory McDonald and Jake Shields. He fought the same timid style, looking for the same overhand right counter, trying to get his opponent to fall into it. If you notice, almost everybody Tyron Woodley knocks out or stuns is because they fall into the right hand. They come in too close, and he has the speed advantage usually to connect quickly with that right hand counter. He would also have the takedown threat against his opponents outside of Demian Maia. This is the first time he has fought someone that he could not go to that takedown. He didn't have the option to go for that takedown without getting put into further danger against a much higher level grappler, and he had to stay in the striking, which also gave someone like Gilbert Burns more things to work with because he knows Woodley's not going to take him down. So it's going to be a striking match, and all Woodley really has on paper is that effective right hand. As long as I game plan around that, I'm pretty much good. And boy, did Gilbert Burns do that. The level of technical striking he displayed in this fight is absolutely shocking. It's going to be very hard for almost every fighter in this division to even outstrike Gilbert Burns, let alone go to the ground with the guy. So Woodley was timid. He was backed up to the cage like he always is in every single fight. He backs himself up. Even just small feints back him up. But in this one, initially when the fight started, he didn't back up too much. He actually was trying to stand in front of Gilbert Burns and land some strikes. He was actually putting out a lot more output than in his previous fights. He was doing a lot of jabs, body jabs, and he kept a probing right hand to parry the jab of Gilbert Burns, taking away Burns' setups. So Burns went another direction to use his speed, and he landed that first overhand right. That is what changed the fight for Tyron Woodley. It got him to back up, and it changed his stance too. So you notice the upright stance, probing right hand, looking for jabs, putting a little bit more output. This stance changed after the overhand. They both fire the right hand. Tyron Woodley throws a right straight, Burns throws a right overhand. Woodley didn't set it up, and he kept his chin up high while Burns dipped his head low to avoid the right straight, and Woodley was right in line of sight and got caught clean by the overhand right, which eventually got him dropped. After this, Woodley's stance completely changed to where now he's leaning forward a little bit more and his hands up to his head, trying to stay focused and look at the punches a lot more clearly, but he's stunned at this point. And this also set the tone for the entirety of the fight afterward and got Woodley to back up to the cage a lot easier, to where now he has to respect the striking of Gilbert Burns a lot more than he did prior to the fight. And another thing that set the dynamic of the whole fight were the feints of Gilbert Burns. With no stop in action, he just kept feinting. Tyron Woodley was falling for all of it. He was either freezing in front and he didn't do anything, or he was taking the bait and reacting to all the feints, and it would get him caught, it would get him in bad positions, or Burns would just do it to back Woodley up to the cage entirely, so it's a lot easier to cut him off due to also the smaller cage, and it limits the amount of space that Woodley has to work with. Feints and keeping at long range as Woodley is close to the cage is the exact game plan that Rory McDonald put forth to defeat Tyron Woodley. It also had the same effect against him. Same thing that has plagued Tyron Woodley in previous fights, but Burns took it to another level, right? It wasn't like what Rory McDonald did where he just pumped jabs, fake jabs, and Woodley didn't know what was going to come at him. He didn't know where the jab was going to go. He didn't know when it was going to come. And he played the guessing game the entire fight. Burns was faking knees. He was faking overhands. He was faking takedowns, faking jabs, faking just movements. And the same reactions came out of Tyron Woodley. He was playing the guessing game. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know how to defend because he didn't know what was coming at him. And constantly just gets him caught. This just put Woodley in a defensive position. He tried to be a little bit more offensive in the first round when it started, but after getting dropped and the non-stop of feints that Burns put in front of him, it never allowed Woodley to stay on the offense. He had moments where he exploded. All of them were seen and all of them were countered in some way, either by a takedown, left hook, a leg kick. It never allowed Woodley to go into second gear, and he was banking on that right hand like he always does. It's nothing different than Woodley's ever done before. It's the same Woodley that's doing the same kind of thing with the same attacks. He just can't go for the takedown in this one. So it turned out to be a very bad stylistic matchup for him because he had the straight striking with a guy who didn't care about his takedowns, and actually his takedowns worked against Tyron Woodley when it came to countering him. So Woodley would explode and set up his right hand behind jabs, but look how aware Burns is of that right overhand. When the jabs are coming at him, he ducks from that to go for the takedown because he knows so far far ahead of time what Woodley's going for. He's moving forward, it's gonna be a big right overhand or a big left hook. All I gotta do is go under for the takedown. And you would think maybe Woodley should have changed it up and go for some uppercuts. But Woodley's never known to be a guy who relies on his uppercuts or is confident in throwing uppercuts in this manner. He is just sticking to what he is comfortable with. And what he's comfortable with is exactly what Burns has completely dissected and researched and game planned for over years of preparation. Was a training partner for Kamaru Usman when he competed up against Tyron Woodley as well. So he has so much preparation for Woodley. And that first takedown, when he countered that right hand, it created a new wrinkle, a new threat that Woodley had to deal with and think about. He did not think it would be as strong as it was. Burns was usually a decent wrestler, good decent takedowns. But in no way did Woodley expect his takedowns to be that effective. And ultimately, because that takedown worked and Woodley now has to respect it, it made the feints after the second round be a much bigger factor in the fight than it was in the first and second rounds, furthering the freeze up of Woodley whenever these feints got thrown at him. And this played out perfectly for Gilbert Burns because every feint he threw at Woodley, it conditioned Woodley for the next follow-up, right? If he would feint low, Woodley would think the next thing that comes at him is going to be low, and this allows Gilbert Burns to land up high. Gilbert Burns feints high, Woodley thinks now everything's going to come up high, and Gilbert attacks low or with a takedown. And it just shows the difference of fundamental skills in the striking between the two. And another one that did is when you saw the difference in striking defense in general. So Woodley goes and throws a jab at Gilbert Burns. Notice the reaction of Burns. Even though he's leaning away from a jab, which is not necessarily what you want to do, because you could potentially get hit by a follow-up right hand or something, he's still in his stance, and he's leaning away, and he's looking to back away entirely. Right? The footing, the stance, the position, the balance have very good defensive qualities. Now look when Burns goes at Woodley. He doesn't even throw a punch. He fakes like he's gonna go for a left hook. He moves in forward after that, and he fakes like he's gonna throw a jab. Woodley goes to parry, but look at Woodley's stance. He goes into a parallel stance from this kind of feint. That's shocking. Huge difference in striking technique just looking at that. Burns showed an enormous amount of speed in this fight. He was way faster than Tyron Woodley, which is not normal for Woodley to fight up against. Usually he's the faster guy. There was a point, 40 seconds left of the third round. Burns pressures with a body kick. Woodley's able to parry it, and he looks to come back, counter with a left hook. But Burns is quick enough to retract his kick, move away from Woodley, and threaten him with a counter left hook of his own, as he expected Woodley to charge at him. Not only does this show the difference in speed of the two, but it shows Burns' awareness. There was also the moment of the jabs. I mean, Woodley was ready to parry. He was in the stance, he had his hand up high, and he was looking to parry. He still gets popped in the face by the jab, and it wasn't just Woodley's too slow, it was that Burns was just way too quick. But more importantly, there was no windup, there was no pump, there was no tell at all. He just popped it out there. And I'm very glad to see a lot of fighters are going to this more, especially the new generation of fighters like Gilbert Burns, whereas the older generation like Tyron Woodley, they would telegraph their jabs so much more. Another interesting thing were the body kicks of Gilbert Burns. Specifically, he was countering with them. So when Woodley goes to blitz him, he tries the same kind of thing he landed on Robbie Lawler and on Jay Huron in his UFC debut. That blitz to get the opponent to back up and get their hands focused in the center, and he goes and attacks with the overhand right over the sides. He tries the same thing against Gilbert Burns. Burns just doesn't back up. All he does is he throws a left body kick. That's it, because the left body kick naturally gets your head away from your opponent. It makes the target of their opponent further away as the kick is coming to their body, right? It naturally forces them to lean away. So even if the overhand comes out, it's not going to be in the correct distance to land, let alone getting hit by the body kick, pushing them away. Beautiful body kick counters. And not just that, Burns' footwork in general was just on point against that overhand. He would step entirely away, or he turns his body or shoulder rolls the right overhand. He would see the load up of the right hand, so he would go for a counter body jab right under it. His feints would draw it out as well. I mean, it was just a complete shutdown of that right hand. And now we will look at some of the moments of the fight here. So in the second round, when Burns got Woodley to the ground, he did something very interesting against the cage to give him an opportunity to land some strikes. So he gets off his knees and hooks his left leg around the right leg of Tyron Woodley, and he starts stepping slowly to his left to straighten the leg of Tyron Woodley, ultimately not allowing him to stand up on it. So Woodley's trying to stand up against the cage, but this doesn't allow him to stand up completely. So Burns plants his right leg to his right for balance, as Woodley has the right overhook and the Burns has a body lock. So he knows if he starts letting his hands go, Woodley's going to try to scramble up to his feet. So he does it in a rapid combination to unload with his right hand twice on Woodley. The reason why I think this is very interesting is I want to see if anybody can work with this. Look at what Burns did here and add on to it, because I can see a lot of things people can work work with in this position that Burns got on Woodley. Could he start landing knees from here? It'd be very awkward to get the leg back without falling over, but if he's leaning against Woodley against the cage like this, and he has his left foot to the ground balancing on it, can he land rapid knees to the body, as well as can he wrap around the left arm and tear it down, and get almost into that Khabib position on the ground? There's a lot of things people can work with here. And now we go into the third round. Woodley backs away as he posts and retreats, almost the same thing that Jon Jones does to everybody. He reaches forward with his hands, leans and moves away from the opponent as they're trying to land their punches. Burns throws a double jab right cross combo. And notice that Woodley is trying to parry the jabs with his right hand, and the fact that he's posting with his left arm, as well as leaning away from Gilbert Burns, it makes the right hand fall short and not able to wrap over the shoulder. Well, Burns makes an adjustment here. Yes, this quickly. He has Woodley close to the cage, and he knows Woodley's going to go for the same defense if he goes for a similar attack. So instead of throwing the jabs, he goes and throws a left slap, almost like a left hook fashion. Woodley sees a left hook. That's what he sees, because the hand extends past the sight of Tyron Woodley, almost in his blind spot. So he didn't know what it was going to be, but he saw his hand going that direction, and his instincts were telling him that it's a left hook. So he defends like he would defend a left hook. Tight right guard, and turns his head away from it. Well, turning his head away from a left hook is going to cause him to turn his head into the right hand of Gilbert Burns. Specifically, Burns went and threw a left slap, right overhand combination, and he dug in really far, stepped in really far for the right hand, knowing that before he didn't have the necessary distance, or he didn't dig in far enough to land the right hand over the posting left arm of Woodley. And also, the fact that Woodley is turning his head to the left, it causes him to square up his stance and square his shoulders rather than leaning away sideways like he did before. And what that also does is, it shortens the length of his left arm posting at Gilbert Burns. When you're sideways to the opponent and you're extending your left hand forward, you can do this as you're watching my video. Look sideways like you're facing an opponent and extend your lead arm forward. Now, square up your shoulders and now extend your arm straight forward at your opponent. Notice how short the reach gets. It's massive. So this also allows Burns to get in even closer because the post is shorter, digs in a lot more, and lands his overhand right over the post, connects clean on Tyron Woodley and actually rocks him. And then we go to the fourth round, 1 minute and 45 seconds left of the round. Gilbert Burns does that same thing he did multiple times in the fight. He kind of leads his way in with a knee, but it's only used as a feint to get Tyron Woodley's attention on it and to back him up to the cage. What this does is it squares up Woodley's stance, reaches forward with his right hand, and has his left hand high up. Burns sees the opening over the right arm, he lands a left hook, goes straight down the center with the right straight as Tyron Woodley's arms start flailing open, follows with 2 huge left hooks, and Burns chases him down with a big right lead hook as he switches to southpaw, and this drops Tyron Woodley. All it took was a simple feint. That's all it took. And that's pretty much the end of the breakdown, guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you give it a like. And if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe. I will have to say, even though how much I like Jorge Masvidal, no matter how much I like Leon Edwards, Gilbert Burns deserves a title shot. Knocking out Demian Maia, who defeated Jorge Masvidal, right, knocked him out in the first round and then dominated Tyron Woodley, I would say better than Kamaru Usman did, who is the #1 ranked contender. How can you not give this guy the title shot? I mean, I love Jorge Masvidal, but he defeated Darren Till, Ben Askren, and Nate Diaz. Like, the competition's different. It's not the same level. Gilbert Burns deserves the title shot, 100%. I hope he gets it in that fight, Usman versus Burns. Note this first. They will fight each other. I know they train together and they're friends, but they both have said before they will fight each other if it comes down to it. That is a hard fight for Kamaru Usman. That's a very hard fight for him because his strength is in his wrestling, his dominant pressure on top. How long will he last against Gilbert Burns on the ground? It's gonna be really tough, man. And the striking, I have to give it to Gilbert Burns. He's a much better striker. He's more powerful too, and he's faster. He has all the tools in the feet to defeat Usman, and he has the skills on the ground to submit him. Tough fight for Usman. I did not think anybody would have this kind of style against Kamaru Usman. But we got the guy, man. The guy with the biggest chance to defeat him or make him more competitive is Gilbert Burns. Can't wait to see it, and I'll see you guys in the next video.